Hello everyone, Hira here. Now we are going to listen to podcast news which includes national, international news in MP3. While walking in the morning or evening, while cooking, cycling or during free time you can listen. It will enhance your learning and understanding of various accents and pronunciations. Listening improves the quality of communication and comprehension. Before going ahead, I would like to welcome you all to the virtual school, a new way of learning and teaching, with the vision of let's grow together. Our mission is to learn how to learn and teach how to teach. So stay tuned. And here we go. 16th June 2021. Important national news. Delhi riots. 3 student activists get bail. HC slams police for casually invoking anti-terror law, says right to protest, not same as terrorist activity. Sobham Rocky Singh, New Delhi. The Delhi High Court on Tuesday granted bail to Jawaharlal Nehru University students Devangana Kalita and Natasha Nerwal and Jamia Millia Islamia student Asif Iqbal Tanha, arrested under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act (UAPA) in connection with the Northeast Delhi riots in 2020. In its order, the court rebuked the Delhi police for casually invoking provisions of the anti-terror law against the 3 accused, who had protested against the enactment of the Citizenship Amendment Act (CAA), noting that the line between the constitutionally guaranteed right to protest and terrorist activity had been blurred. We are constrained to say that it appears that in its anxiety to suppress dissent and in the morbid fear that matters may get out of hand, the state has blurred the line between the constitutionally guaranteed right to protest and terrorist activity, a bench of Justices Siddharth Mridul and Anup Jairam Bhambani observed. If such blurring gains traction, democracy would be in peril, the bench asserted. The 3 activists, arrested in May last year, have been named in multiple firsts in relation to the riots. They were granted bail by local courts in the other riots-related cases but denied bail in the fear where the stringent UAPA provisions were invoked against them. The court remarked that the charge sheet lacked any specific, particularized, factual allegations that would make out the ingredients of offences under the UAPA. A.1 Not a variant of concern yet, Centre found in Maharashtra, AP, Telangana. Special Correspondent, New Delhi. India on Tuesday formally acknowledged the occurrence of A.1, a coronavirus variant that is closely related to the prevailing Delta variant. A.1, or B.1.617.2.1, has a mutation called K417N that is linked to high infectivity and has been associated with the Beta variant, first identified in South Africa. This A.1 was first identified in March in Europe but brought into the public domain only 2 days ago, said V.K. Paul, Chairman, National Expert Group on Vaccine Administration of COVID-19, at a press conference. Yes, a new variant has been found. It's not yet a variant of concern, or one which has adverse consequences to humanity. We don't know much about it yet and are studying it, including the prevalence in India, he said. As The Hindu reported on Monday, 5 Indian laboratories submitted data on this variant in May and June to GISAID, a global repository. Public Health England, a UK body, said of the 63 genomes in the GISAID repository as of June 7, 6 were from India. Evidence of A.1 had been found in Andhra Pradesh, Maharashtra, Telangana and Karnataka. Dr. Paul said that while continued mutation was a biological fact, the steps to protect against exposure remained the same, not giving opportunities to the virus to spread. Despite assurance, Twitter yet to appoint compliance officer, it can be liable for any content posted on platform. Sources: Yuthika Bhargava, New Delhi. Despite its assurance to the government on June 5 to provide details of a Chief Compliance Officer (CCO) within a week, microblogging platform Twitter has failed to do so thus far. It has instead informed the government that it has posted job descriptions for required roles and will fill these as quickly as possible, The Hindu has learned. According to an official source, due to non-compliance with the new IT rules, Twitter may no longer be classified as an intermediary, and there will be no separate order from the government on this. By losing its intermediary status, the US-headquartered social media platform can now be held liable for any content posted by any user on its platform. However, according to Twitter, an interim CCO has been retained and the details would be shared with the ministry soon. West Bengal BJP battles dwindling flock after Mukul Roy's exit. 24 MLAs skip meeting with governor on post-poll violence. Leader of opposition in the assembly Suvendu Adhikari. Shiv Sahai Singh, Kolkata. The West Bengal unit of the BJP was left scrambling for face savers on Tuesday after a third of its 75 MLAs did not turn up for a meeting with Governor Jagdeep Dhankar a day earlier to highlight the post-poll violence in the state. Dilip Ghosh, the state party chief, said a decision had been taken to take along 31 MLAs, but many more arrived, so the number swelled to 51. The Trinamool leadership was quick to highlight the missing MLAs. All the MLAs did not go and meet the governor. Why did the 24 MLAs not go? The BJP should investigate this, said TMC leader and Rajya Sabha MP Sukhendu Shekhar Roy. The meeting was billed as a show of strength for the embattled party after the defection of its national vice president Mukul Roy to the Trinamool Congress last week sparked speculation of more MLAs following suit. The party won 77 seats, but two of the winners, who are Lok Sabha MPs, did not take oath as MLAs. Mr. Ghosh said the defectors had come with the tide and their decision to leave will not hurt the party. Leader of the opposition in the assembly Suvendu Adhikari has been emphasizing that he will ensure that they are disqualified as per the anti-defection law. The BJP finds itself in a catch-22 situation. It had encouraged defections before the elections when about 30 TMC MLAs joined the party. What makes the situation more complicated is that the two TMC MPs who defected to the BJP have not resigned from the Lok Sabha. One of them is Mr. Adhikari's father Sisir Adhikari. Suvendu should go and share the wisdom of anti-defection law with his father, TMC spokesperson Kunal Ghosh said. Defections have been a regular phenomenon in the state politics for the past 10 years. Between 2011 and 2021, dozens of MLAs of the Congress and a few from the left joined the Trinamool. Political observer Biswanath Chakraborty said 14 Congress MLAs and 3 from the left joined the TMC between 2016 and 2021 and none was disqualified. Besides the MLAs, several leaders like Rajiv Banerjee and Prabir Gosal are sending feelers to the TMC that they want to return, as is former Kolkata Mayor Sovan Chatterjee. Internal bickering. For the BJP, the problem is also the bickering among its leadership. One of the most senior leaders and former Meghalaya Governor Tathagat Roy has been regularly targeting the leadership. Soon after Mr. Mukul Roy's return to the TMC, the former governor targeted Kailash Vijayvargiya, BJP National General Secretary, who is the party's central observer to Bengal. He tweeted asking Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee to take the BJP National Secretary into Trinamool, sharing a photograph of Mr. Mukul Roy and Mr. Vijayvargiya. The former governor had described Mr. Mukul Roy as a Trojan horse. Suspended BSP legislators meet Akhilesh Yadav, may join SP MLAs trying to sidestep anti-defection law provisions. Press Trust of India Lucknow. At least 5 MLAs suspended by the Bahujan Samaj Party last year met Samajwadi Party chief Akhilesh Yadav on Tuesday, triggering speculation that they may join his party. Handia legislator Hakimlal Bind said he, along with Chaudhry Aslam Ali, Mujtaba Siddiqui, Hargovind Bhargav, Aslam Raini and Sushma Patel, met the SP chief. However, Mr. Bhargav said that he was not present at the meeting. I was in Sigoli, his assembly constituency, and did not go there meeting. I also saw my name being flashed on news channels, he said. Deputy leader of the BSP in the State Assembly Uma Shankar Singh described the MLAs as garbage. Discussion on polls. Mundra Badshahpur MLA Ms. Patel said the meeting with Mr. Yadav, which lasted for 15 to 20 minutes, witnessed discussions on the upcoming UP Assembly elections. Asked about the future course of action, Ms. Patel said, "Personally, I have made up my mind to join the Samajwadi Party." However, Vinga MLA Mr. Raini said that they can form a party or join an outfit without attracting the provisions of the anti-defection law only if their number reaches 12, two-thirds of the current strength of the BSP in the 403-member assembly. Currently, our number is 11, he said. Ex-Speaker Sukhdev Rajbhar can be the 12th MLA, said Mr. Raini. Once the political party is formed, senior leader Lalji Verma will tell you, he added. Reports surfaced that Mr. Raini met UP Assembly Speaker Hriday Narayan Dikshit, but the latter denied it. Mr. Siddiqui said if Ms. Mayawati decides to withdraw their suspension, they may think of rejoining the party. As far as the meeting with Akhilesh Yadav is concerned, it was a courtesy call and there was no discussion on polls or tickets, he said. Mizoram cult leaders can finally accept his death. Ziane Chana to be interred in his village. Special correspondent Guwahati. More than a day after refusing to believe he died, the family of a polygamous Christian cult leader in Mizoram has decided to perform his last rites. World's largest family. Zione Chana or Zion Hake, who headed the Chana cult as well as the world's largest family, died in a private hospital in Aswal on June 13 afternoon. He slipped into a coma on June 11 after falling ill on June 7 due to diabetes and hypertension. The members of his family at Bakthong village, about 100 kilometers from Aswal, and about 3,000 followers of the cult claimed he was alive and his body still warm. They finally accepted the death of the 76-year-old patriarch about 9 p.m. on Monday. Zaiting Kumar, the cult's secretary, said Zione will be interred in the village. We have not yet decided the time of his burial, he said. Zione had 39 wives, 94 children and 33 grandchildren. All members of the family live in a sprawling 4-story mansion in Bakthong, a self-sustaining village. The family and the cult's reputation had made Bakthong a major tourist attraction. Zione had even built a guest house in his mansion to cater to tourists. Charges of fake COVID tests during Kumbh being probed. Detailed report is expected within a week, Health Ministry. Special Correspondent, New Delhi. The Health Ministry on Tuesday said an investigation is underway into the allegations that over 1 lakh fake COVID-19 tests were done in Uttarakhand during the Kumbh Mela. To a question at the ministry press conference, Joint Secretary Love Agrawal said, "We got to know about an incident when a Punjab resident received a message that his COVID test had been conducted in Haridwar, while he was in Punjab. The information was passed on to the state government, which in a proactive manner conducted an inquiry and about a week ago and directed senior officials in Haridwar to prepare a detailed report. He said while the exact number of the alleged fake tests is not known, a detailed report is expected within a week or so. Action will follow. Whatever necessary action, including for criminal offence, will be taken against those involved in recording tests without actually conducting them. The ministry said some reports had indicated that a large number of test results were issued by private labs which may have been fake. The labs reportedly did so to meet the daily quota of 50,000 tests set by the Uttarakhand High Court. A detailed probe was ordered by the Haridwar administration after preliminary investigations revealed that many private labs roped in by the district health department had issued fake reports in the name of random people on the basis of their identity cards and phone numbers. The Indian Council of Medical Research, ICMR, was alerted when the Punjab resident reported the matter to a senior officer in Uttarakhand. He alleged that his Aadhaar and mobile number had been misused. All terrorists criminals but not all criminals terrorists. HC Court urges caution in use of the term for conventional offences. Sobham Rocky Singh, New Delhi. Notwithstanding the fact that the definition of Terrorist Act in Unlawful Activities Prevention Act UAPA is wide and even somewhat vague, the phrase Terrorist Act cannot be permitted to be casually applied to criminal acts that fall squarely within the definition of conventional offences, the Delhi High Court remarked on Tuesday. A bench of Justice Siddharth Mridul and Justice Anup Jairam Bhandwani said the word terrorism or terror has nowhere been defined in the UAPA. Hence, the court must be careful in employing the definitional words and phrases used in Section 15 of the UAPA that defines Terrorist Act in their absolute literal sense or use them lightly in a manner that would trivialize the extremely heinous offense of Terrorist Act, without understanding how terrorism is different even from conventional heinous crime, the bench said. The High Court's observation came while granting regular bail to JNU students Natasha Nerwal and Devangana Kalita, and Jamia Millia Islamia student Asif Iqbal Tanha, arrested in connection with the Northeast Delhi riots. UAPA's origin. The Terrorist Act, including conspiracy and act preparatory to the commission of a terrorist act, were brought within the purview of UAPA by an amendment made in 2004, on the heels of Parliament repealing Prevention of Terrorism Act, POTA. POTA's precursor, the Terrorist and Disruptive Activities Prevention Act, TADA, was repealed in 1995. The High Court said the phrase, Terrorist Act, must get its color and flavor from the problem of terrorism as was earlier addressed by the Parliament under TADA and POTA. Defining terrorism. To understand the concept and construction of terrorism, the High Court referred to various judgments of the Supreme Court where the issue has already been dealt with. Terrorism is one of the manifestations of increased lawlessness and cult of violence. Terrorist activity does not merely arise by causing disturbance of law and order or of public order. The fallout of the intended activity must be such that it travels beyond the capacity of the ordinary law enforcement agencies to tackle it under the ordinary penal law, the Supreme Court had said in Hitendra Vishnu Thakur vs. State of Maharashtra case. In the same judgment, the Supreme Court said, every terrorist may be a criminal, but every criminal cannot be given the label of a terrorist, only to set in motion the more stringent provisions of TADA. The High Court said, in its opinion, the intent and purport of the Parliament in enacting the UAPA, and more specifically in amending it in 2004 and 2008 to bring terrorist activity within its scope, was, and could only have been, to deal with matters of profound impact on the defense of India, nothing more and nothing less. Foisting extremely grave and serious penal provisions engrafted in sections 15, 17 and 18 UAPA frivolously upon people, would undermine the intent and purpose of the Parliament in enacting a law that is meant to address threats to the very existence of our nation, the court cautioned. It reminded that a sacrosanct principle of interpretation of penal provisions is that they must be construed strictly and narrowly, to ensure that a person who was not within the legislative intendment does not get roped into a penal provision. Also, the more stringent a penal provision, the more strictly it must be construed, the High Court remarked, pointing at the use of the stringent provision under UAPA against the 3 students in the Northeast Delhi riots case. NGT dismisses review plea alleging environmental violations in Aravalli. Staff reporter, New Delhi. The National Green Tribunal has dismissed a plea which alleged violation of environmental norms by construction of illegal roads and unauthorized mining in the Aravalli in Gurugram district. While dismissing the plea which sought a review of an earlier order, a bench headed by NGT chairperson Justice Adarsh Kumar Goyal said that the grounds taken by the review applicant, that he was not an encroacher, was not the issue for consideration before the tribunal. The matter in issue in the original application was illegal mining and encroachment of forest land, and on the basis of the Forest Department report, the statutory authorities were directed to take further action in accordance with the law. No substantial ground for maintainability of the review application is made out, the bench said. The tribunal added, the review application is devoid of any merit and deserves to be dismissed. For the determination of the right title and interest of any party, the aggrieved may approach the appropriate forum if so advised. Earlier, the NGT had sought a report from the Forest Department on the allegations of illegal construction in a forest area. SC closest trial against Italian Marines. Gov plea to stop proceedings follows UN tribunal decision in May last year. Salvatore Giron and Massimiliano Lator. Tipti. Krishnadas Rajagopal, NEW Delhi. The Supreme Court on Tuesday ordered the closure of court proceedings in India against the 2 Italian Marines who allegedly killed 2 fishermen off the Kerala coast after mistaking them for pirates in 2012. A bench of Justices Indira Banerjee and M.R. Shah agreed to the Union government's plea to stop the criminal trial and other proceedings against Salvatore Giron and Massimiliano Lator, detailed on vessel Enrica Lexi, following a decision of the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea, ITLOS, in May last year that the duo would be tried in Italy. The court recorded that Italy had transferred 10 rupees crore to India as compensation to the fishermen's families. The families have given their consent. The money has already been transferred to the Supreme Court registry by the Ministry of External Affairs. We are satisfied that the compensation of 10 rupees crore, over and above the ex gratia amount already paid to the heirs of the deceased fishermen, can be said to be a reasonable amount of compensation, the court recorded in an 11-page order. Justice Shah, who read out the order, concluded that this was a fit case to close all proceedings in India. The bench ordered the amount to be transferred from the Supreme Court registry to the Kerala High Court. The Apex Court asked the Chief Justice of the Kerala High Court to nominate a judge to hear the fishermen's families and disburse invest 4 rupees crore each to their rightful legal heirs. It said care should be taken that the money reached the heirs and was not diverted, into wrong hands. While dispersing the amount of compensation to the heirs, i.e., 4 rupees crores each, their heirs, interest is required to be protected so that the amount of compensation paid to them is not frittered away, the court noted. It suggested investing the money in the name of the dependents' heirs of the deceased in a fixed deposit in a nationalized bank for some time. The balance 2 rupees crore, the court ordered, would be paid to the owner of the fishing boat that came under attack from the Marines. It urged Italy to resume the criminal proceedings against the Marines in compliance with the UN tribunal. The court also asked Italy, India and the state of Kerala to cooperate with each other to bring justice in the case. On April 9, the court told the Union government that it would consider passing an order to quash the criminal proceedings only after Italy deposited 10 rupees crore as compensation. SC adjourns WB riots hearing center makes the plea on petitions seeking a CBI or CIT investigation. Spot visit, a Union Home Ministry team conducting an investigation into the post-poll violence in Birbhum. Tipti. Legal correspondent, New Delhi. The Supreme Court on Tuesday agreed to a request by the Union government to adjourn the hearing on the petitions seeking a CBI or a CIT, Special Investigation Team, investigation into incidents of post-poll violence in West Bengal. Appearing before a vacation bench of Justices Indira Banerjee and M.R. Shah, Solicitor General Tushar Mehta asked the court to schedule the hearing on June 18. The court was primarily hearing a joint petition filed by the family members of BJP activists Abhijit Sarkar and Haran Adhikari, who were killed allegedly in the violence following the assembly polls in May. Total inaction. The families have alleged total inaction and even subversion of the investigation by the state administration and police. The state government has replied that first information reports had been registered and several arrests made in connection with the murders. In an affidavit filed on Monday on allegations of state complicity in the post-poll violence, the Mamata Banerjee government maintained that these were concocted stories spread on social media by miscreants. It said, it is untenable to categorize each and every act of violence following the declaration of elections results as post-poll violence, while adopting a premise that such violence is ongoing in West Bengal to which the state machinery is turning a blind eye. False allegations of state complicity was drawn on the basis of hearsay reports disseminated on social media by miscreants. The apex court was misled about the law and order situation. The petitions reek of political motivation, it said. The state said, no person can be forced to stay away from his/her house, as it is their inherent right to live in their houses peacefully. The petitions in the Supreme Court conveyed a misleading narrative, while a 5-judge bench of the Calcutta High Court was already hearing a gamut of issues arising from the alleged post-poll violence. The state said a 3-member committee of officers nominated by the National Human Rights Commission, the West Bengal Human Rights Commission and the member secretary of the West Bengal State Legal Service Authority had been formed to monitor the situation. Thank you. International news. US moves to tackle domestic terrorism. It announces a national strategy that focuses on prevention, interruption and dissuasion. Big steps. The US on January 6 saw a deadly attack on Congress by Trump supporters. File photo. Agence France-Presse, Washington. The US government on Tuesday unveiled its national strategy to fight domestic terrorism, an issue that is a priority for President Joe Biden after the assault on Congress in January and the rise of white nationalist extremists. Domestic violent extremists motivated by a range of ideologies pose an elevated threat to our country in 2021, a senior administration official told media persons, speaking on condition of anonymity. Racially or ethnically motivated violent extremists, and specifically those who espouse the superiority of the white race and anti-government militia violent extremists, pose the most lethal threat, the official said. The government's plan is, however, ideologically neutral, and consists of 4 pillars that focus on prevention, interruption and dissuasion, while preserving individual freedoms. The Biden administration wants first to improve information sharing on extremist groups or individuals at the federal and local level. For this, the Justice Department and the Federal Bureau of Investigation have set up a nationwide system for reporting terrorism-related cases. The government also wants to thwart the recruitment of violent extremists and calls for violence in collaboration with large technology platforms and social media networks. Washington announced in May that it was joining the Christchurch Call, an international movement against the online dissemination of extremist content, which former President Donald Trump had refused to join. The government will also improve the system for prosecuting extremists by recruiting analysts, investigators and prosecutors. The 4th pillar is based on countering long-term drivers and enablers of domestic terrorism, including economic inequality, those who feel left behind by the 21st century economy, structural racism and the proliferation of guns, the official said. Mr. Biden promised in his January 20 inauguration speech that the country would confront and defeat the rise of political extremism, white supremacy, domestic terrorism, after a string of deadly racist attacks in recent years. In March, FBI Chief Christopher Wray told Congress that the number of federal investigations working on domestic terrorism had doubled from 1,000 to 2,000 since he took office in 2017. The US was shocked by the deadly January 6 assault on Congress by Trump supporters. Nearly 500 people have been arrested for their roles in the attack, according to the FBI. Trump pressed Justice Dept to probe poll fraud claims. Emails show he sought DOJ's support for his legal efforts. Donald Trump. Associated Press, Washington. During the last weeks of his presidency, Donald Trump and his allies pressured the Department of Justice, DOJ, to investigate unsubstantiated claims of widespread 2020 election fraud, despite his former Attorney General declaring there was no evidence of it, newly released emails show. The emails, released Tuesday by the House Oversight Committee, reveal in new detail how Mr. Trump, his White House Chief of Staff and other allies pressured members of the US government to challenge the 2020 election over false claims, even though officials at Homeland Security and Justice, as well as Republican election leaders across the country, said there had been no pervasive fraud. Former Attorney General William Barr, a longtime Trump loyalist, was among those who said there was no evidence of such fraud. The emails also show the extent to which Trump worked to enlist then-acting Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen in his campaign's failing legal efforts to challenge the election result, including suggesting filing a brief with the US Supreme Court. The ones sent to Mr. Rosen include debunked conspiracy theories and false information about voter fraud. Mr. Trump's Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, asked about investigating allegations of voter fraud caused by satellites from Italy. Mr. Meadows tried to have Mr. Rosen investigate the conspiracy theories and pushed the acting Attorney General to meet with an ally of Trump lawyer Rudy Giuliani, who was pitching unfounded election conspiracies. US-Russia ties are at an impasse. Kremlin official Biden and Putin will meet today. Agence France Presse, Moscow. A top aide to Vladimir Putin said US-Russia relations are at an impasse, but this week's summit with Joe Biden in Switzerland could help ease tensions. Mr. Putin and Mr. Biden are to meet at a villa in Geneva on Wednesday with tensions high over a long list of disputes, from cyber attacks and election meddling to human rights violations. Russian-US relations are now at an impasse. The situation is close to critical. Something needs to be done, Yuri Ushakov, Mr. Putin's foreign affairs advisor, told media persons ahead of the summit. I view this meeting with practical optimism, but not much. It is a first meeting under difficult circumstances, he said. Ambassadors return. Mr. Ushakov said the Russian and US ambassadors, who returned home this year amid tensions over sanctions, could go back to their posts immediately if the summit goes well. It will be a tremendous achievement if the ambassadors return to work. Mr. Ushakov said the two leaders would discuss cybersecurity, climate change, the Arctic and regional conflicts, among other issues. Statement by NATO is slander, China. Associated Press Beijing. The Chinese mission to the European Union denounced a NATO statement that declared Beijing a security challenge, saying China is a force for peace but will defend itself if threatened. The Chinese news release said the NATO statement was a slander on China's peaceful development, a misjudgment of the international situation and NATO's own role, and a continuation of the Cold War mentality. NATO allies joined the US on Monday in formally criticizing Beijing as a constant security challenge. Taiwan reports, largest incursion by Chinese forces. 28 aircraft entered the air defense identification zone. The incursion involved J-16 and J-11 fighters, as well as H-6 bombers. Reuters Taipei. As many as 28 Chinese Air Force aircraft, including fighters and nuclear-capable bombers, entered Taiwan's air defense identification zone, others, on Tuesday, the island's government said. It is the largest reported incursion to date. While there was no immediate comment from Beijing, the news comes after the group of 7 leaders issued a joint statement on Sunday scolding China and underscored the importance of peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. Taiwan has complained over the last few months of repeated missions by China's Air Force near the self-ruled island, concentrated in the southwestern part of its air defense zone near the Taiwan-controlled Pratas Islands. The latest Chinese mission involved 14 J-16 and 6 J-11 fighters, as well as 4 H-6 bombers, which can carry nuclear weapons, and anti-submarine, electronic warfare and early warning aircraft, said Taiwan's defense ministry. It was the largest daily incursion since the ministry began regularly reporting Chinese Air Force activities in Taiwan's others last year. The ministry said Taiwanese combat aircraft were dispatched to intercept the Chinese aircraft and missile systems were also deployed to monitor them. At least 15 killed in Somalia suicide attack. The bombing was at an army camp. Tragic attack. A soldier injured in a suicide bombing at a military base in Mogadishu leaving a hospital. Reuters. Mogadishu. At least 15 people were killed on Tuesday in a suicide bombing at an army camp in the Somali capital Mogadishu, a Reuters witness who counted the bodies at Medina Hospital said. Officials at the hospital confirmed that the deceased were victims of an attack earlier in the day at an army camp. There was no immediate claim of responsibility. Islamist group Al-Shabaab frequently carries out bombings in the Horn of Africa country. A Somali military officer, Odwa Yusuf Raj, told state media earlier on Tuesday that 10 new recruits had been killed and 20 others wounded, when a suicide bomber detonated explosives at a checkpoint outside of General Debon military training camp in the capital. Far-right Israeli groups to march in East Jerusalem. Palestinian factions slammed the decision. Israeli border police blocking a main road ahead of the march. Reuters. Jerusalem. Far-right Israeli groups will march in and around East Jerusalem's Old City on Tuesday in a flag-waving procession that risks igniting tensions with Palestinians in the contested city and rekindling violence between Israel and Gaza militants. Assailing the march as a provocation, Palestinian factions have called for a day of rage in Gaza and the Israeli-occupied West Bank. Gaza's Islamist rulers Hamas have warned of renewed hostilities if it goes ahead. We warn of the dangerous repercussions that may result from the occupying powers' intention to allow extremist Israeli settlers to carry out the flag march in occupied Jerusalem tomorrow, Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Shtayyeh said on Twitter. An original march was rerouted to avoid the Old City's Muslim Quarter on May 10 when tensions in Jerusalem led Gaza's Islamist rulers Hamas to fire rockets towards the Holy City, helping set off 11 days of deadly fighting. Israeli rightists accused their government of caving into Hamas by changing its route. They rescheduled the procession after a Gaza truce took hold. Tuesday's march, due to begin at 6:30 p.m. 1530 GMT, poses an immediate challenge for new Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, who took office on Sunday. China scientist denies Wuhan lab leak theory. Agence France Presse. Washington. The Chinese scientist at the center of theories that COVID-19 originated with a leak from her specialized lab in the city of Wuhan has denied that her institution was to blame for the pandemic. How on earth can I offer up evidence for something where there is no evidence? Dr. Shizhen Li told the New York Times. I don't know how the world has come to this, constantly pouring filth on an innocent scientist. Dr. Shi is an expert in bad coronaviruses, and some scientists have said she could have been leading so-called gain-of-function experiments, in which scientists increase the strength of a virus to better study its effects on hosts. UAE-backed troops at Yemen base. Associated Press. Dubai. A militia leader has acknowledged that his Emirati-backed troops are stationed on an island in a crucial maritime choke point where a mysterious air base is now under construction. The comments by Tariq Saleh come as ship tracking data show that at least 2 Emirati-owned vessels have traveled to Mayu Island in the Bab el-Mandeb Strait since May. The UAE has not responded to repeated requests for comment about the base. Yemen's internationally recognized government has demanded a formal investigation into the base. Speaking in an interview, Saleh acknowledged the presence of troops from his National Resistance Forces militia on Mayu Island. Thank you. Thank you so much for watching this video as a podcast. Do like, share and comment. Press the subscribe button and hit the bell icon to get new notifications. Thank you. Take care and stay safe. God bless you all. Jai Maa Bharti. To download news and editorials in MP3, follow us on Telegram, Virtual School. The link is provided in the description below.